This lecture will be devoted to the last role of a sales manager and ambassador role. But before that, we will have a look also a little bit on the tools to work with an objections, what are usually used in a business partner role, yeah, and what every and each sales manager shall know, I believe. Good. Let us move to slides. Yeah, and that's the famous circle what I have been showing to you several times already. So just to remind, we are talking about the three different roles what are integrated in a sales manager usually. Yeah, so he's acting in one of this role, let's say every day, yeah, or during different activities in different activities during the day. And let me last lecture was about the business partner role mainly, and let me add some additional, I believe, quite useful tools and methods for the business partner role today as well. And we will have a look at them briefly, let's say, at the ambassador role, since it's very important, but maybe yeah, so not really much the focus of this course. So coming back to the business partner role, what is the idea of that? So that's basically let's say an activities when sales manager works directly with a customer. Yeah, so that's an identification of needs, that's a negotiation of price, that's creation of offers, development of some concepts together with customer. Yeah, so that's an idea of business partner. So we are not searching for a customer anymore, we are not planning our activities in sense of like entrepreneur. Yeah, but we have a customer already, and let's say we are working on the increase of our share of wallet, so called. Yeah, so with that customer. Yeah, so we try to define and find different stakeholders within the customer, try to understand what other activities running there, and look how we can position offerings of our company within the customer. And the portion of a business partner responsibilities, let's say, what we will discuss today would be price negotiations and negotiations. Yeah, so sorry, objections. Yeah, so yeah. So what is it objection? What's the objection? Yeah, so that's basically when the customer or your contact partner at the customer side does not agree with your opinion, yeah, or is not satisfied with an offer what you have done, yeah, so or has something against, yeah, so that's an objection. And what are the main reasons why do the objections appear? Let's have a look on the left side of the slide. So first of all, I mean, even in B2B we are always talking to persons, yeah, so we may always have some personal reason for the objection. That can be some personal interests, you never know. That can be a, let's say, bad experience either with our company or with their, let's say, similar solutions from competitors in the past. So that may be a reason for objection. That can be also a lack of authority. So when we are talking to a wrong person who is not able to make a decision, yeah, so sometimes for the person it's easier to say, you know, that he does not agree with our opinion, yeah, then let us know that actually he's not capable, he's not able to make this decision, yeah, so he does not have enough needed authority. So that's kind of personal reasons what may be basis for objection. Then that can be definitely always some excuses, yeah, and excuse that can be that for the person the topic is not relevant or not interesting, or a person have already made a decision for the competitor. Yeah, and it's also quite rare then you will let's say that depends a little bit on the culture, but in general I think it's quite rare that you will get this information like told in your face. Yeah, so most probably the person will try to avoid communicating with you, or let's say will put some questions and will tell that he does not agree, he's not happy with something and so on, and that can be the reason. Then another reason, it's also kind of a personal one, maybe that the person is not able to accept the risk. Yeah. So yeah, maybe he is skeptical about new technologies. Maybe he does not know how to, um, let's say, how to transform the process what he is responsible to. If he accepts your offer, yeah, so he has this little bit of reluctance because of the risk, yeah, or he generally is not a fan of new ideas, yeah, so that's everything can be also a reason for objection, why you are getting a no, yeah, so why getting refusal for your offer. And for some persons, the objections is really kind of game, yeah, so they have this like psychological need in respect, yeah, so or self affirmation, and they try to put so many questions as possible, ask you them, yeah, and see if you're able to answer these questions, and if you are able to prove or to confirm that the questions are really competent, and the people so or the person has the right level of knowledge and technical competence, so that may be also a reason. So that's the four types. Let's say that's not the four types of objections. That's a little bit deeper. Yeah. So that's the four routes, four possible routes for objections. There may be something else as well, but that's most likely happening routes. Yeah. What do we do? What do we usually do when we hear no from the customer, yeah, or we hear like a lot of questions or like a very skeptical attitude? How shall the sales manager work with that? There are three general rules, yeah, so definitely we shall avoid like a direct confronting, yeah, so directly saying that yeah, your question is stupid, you are wrong, you have a wrong understanding, it's actually not like that, and it's correct what I mean, yeah, so how I see that, that's generally not advised, yeah. Yeah, since psychologically also for the person you are talking to that would be very unpleasant to hear such an answer, and the probability that he will continue refusing and continue with his objections is just higher. Then the second one is sometimes our understanding of the reasons behind the objections is based on the assumption. So we hear the first phrase from the person, from our customer, who is saying us, no, I do not think that it would be possible. And then we start building assumptions. So probably he has his own interest in that project. That's why he does not want to accept my offer. Yeah, so that's an assumption what that, like, in 1 second appears in our head. And that's quite dangerous. Yeah. So in work with objections, it's very important to let the person speak out, to let your customer explain what is actually behind the objection, and or what is the objection in detail, in order to properly, let's say, put your counter arguments, yeah, and in order to properly plan how you would like to respond to these objections. And the third one is, yeah, so that's what I meant, avoid direct contra objections to opinion of another person. So I mean, it's clear that you have a lot of arguments why your product or service is good, yeah, and why it's better than competitor, but when the customer is telling you that he thinks that competitor is better, then it's not helpful to say, yeah, you are wrong because this and this, yeah. It's better. I will show you on the next slide what are the more productive way how you can transform the objections into, let's say, confirmation statements, yeah, and confirmation for your offers. And here are some methods also on the right side of the slide below, how you may be able to work with an objections. And we will have a deeper look at them on the next slide. Yeah? So that's a partial agreement. That's contact questions. That's a switching of objection into a positive fact. Yeah, that's a reference to an independent opinion or a reference to another customer project what succeeded. That's an let's say yeah, deeper questions to understand the objections. And yeah, so the way to let the person speak out and let the objections to be said. But let's have a look more in detail, what does it meant with that. So a partial agreement, What does it mean? So that means that at the beginning, at the very beginning, when you hear an objection from the customer, you need to accept that. Yeah. So you need to confirm that you have heard and understood the objection. So show the customer that you understood the objection and point of view. That's very important. That's also a part of active listening methodology, let's say. Yeah. So you are listening to the person because you want to understand his message, you want to understand his point, not because you want to prepare your argument to say back. Yeah. So understand the objection and try to refute it with your arguments. Yeah. So only after that, as you confirmed and that you understood the objection correctly. So this approach would increase, let's say, acceptance of your arguments, because I mean, I'm sure that you have good arguments, and again, I'm saying that again, you know that your product is better, and probably you have already an answer to that objection. But if you make it clear that you understood the point of view of another person, yeah, and then put your argument, that would be much better accepted. And the person will say, okay, the guy knows what I mean, and now he gives an argument. Okay, maybe I really shall not be concerned about that anymore. Transformation of objective into the question. So that's the second method. That's also, I think, quite a useful one. Basically, as a human being, it's for us also psychologically always easier to answer the question than to confront with an objection. So try to transform, to convert the objection into the question and answer the question. And so, as an example, the person is saying, yeah, but the delivery, the delivery times of your company have been late all the time. So last 2 years. So I'm not sure if we shall go into an agreement with you. Yeah. So and so you can put it. That's an objection about the delivery time. Yeah. So you can transform it into the question and say, okay, I see that so the delivery times are very important for you, and you are asking what have we done in the last years in order to increase or improve our delivery conditions. Yeah. So or improve their so the delivery times. So you transform this objection into question. You show again an acceptance and understanding of that objection, and you answer a question. And it's much easier to answer such a question than start to working with an objections, especially if they're related to some past events, because you cannot control the past. You cannot change the past. Yeah, you can only influence the future or present. Another method is then a reference to an independent opinion, and that's very useful, especially if you have some customer references, yeah, or you have done this project, you have sold this product already to some famous, well-known to the person you are talking to, customers, yeah, and other companies. So if the person has still some doubts or hesitation, you can always say, we have sold that already to a company ABC, and so the quality of their product increased in 5% since the implementation of our product, so last year. And then you can say, yeah, so I can send you also some details on that. They approved us, let's say, to show it as a reference case. So by that, you're neglecting, let's say, this objection. So the person who had it, okay, so yeah, so that's the best argument what you can do. Let the objections be said. Yeah. So that's what I mentioned before. So do not try to say something against the objection directly, or do not try to hide the objection or put them aside, saying that, yeah, it's not important, you don't need to take care of that, and so on, because it will be taken, let's say, as a not a good game from your side, and then the person may say that you want to hide something or something or like that. So in opposite, you must be always open for objections. You shall accept that. Yeah, I'm telling it again. And accept means in words, yes, so orally say something that you accept the objection and try to reply on them. and what is a boomerang effect. So in some cases that may be possible to return the customer objections into confirmation of your statement. Yeah, so you return this objection as a boomerang. Um, we will try to practice that on our during our online sessions as well. So all these methods that you get a little bit better understanding how does it work. Here is the 7 steps approach to cope with objections. So the first one is make a pause, breath in, breath out. Yeah, so you do not need to say something directly. Yeah, so that's a really wrong understanding that so there must be no silence in a discussion. If he says something against and I'm keeping silence, that means that I have no answer or whatever. No, that's a wrong understanding. I mean, think about that. Yeah, so think about the objection, about the details, what the customer said. If there are no details, ask customer to tell you, to give you some details about that. Yeah, so ask more, try to understand deeper what is the root of that objection. Yeah, so what is really behind. Then the very good step is try to empty the customer. So ask him, is that all what you actually worrying about? Yeah, or are there any points you would like us to discuss? So if he confirms here, yes, that's the only point I'm worrying about, that would be very hard in the next negotiation steps for him psychologically as well to bring new points into the table. Then another one is try to bind the customer with an obligation or by an obligation, and ask him like, okay, I see that you recognize this feature as a problem point. Would it be fine if when we solve it, would we be able to move forward? Yeah, so that's this binding effect. So when he says yes, as soon as we solve that, we would be able to move forward. That's well done. Yeah, so again, psychologically, that would be very hard for him or her, let's say, to bring another argument again onto the table. So afterwards, you can present your counter arguments and so on. All your statements, I don't know, reasons why the product is better and so on. But don't forget to check the acceptance. Don't forget to check if the customer understood your points. Yeah, because that's again that's one of the methods or let's say steps in the effective communication. So try to get the acceptance that your message was successfully transmitted to a brain of another person. Yeah, so it's not only important to say something, but it's also important to get a confirmation that what has been said is clearly understood, and because that's actually what we are trying to do. Our goal is not to say something. Our goal is that the person we are talking to understands what we are saying. And so as the last point, confirm the agreement. Yeah, so confirm again that okay, so the reason the issue is resolved, the objection is resolved, the arguments what you have said is enough. Yeah, so that's as simple as that. So for some persons that works naturally. Yeah, so for some persons that may be a little bit more complicated, but that's their I think 7 steps approach. If you train that several times, that may be helpful in any types of negotiations or working with objectives you are in. So it's not only in sales. That's a lot of cases in university, a lot of cases at the office, at home, everywhere. And I mean, do not forget that an objection is a very good sign. So it's much worse when the person or counterpart with whom you are talking does not give you any feedback, yeah, or just says yeah, all good, all good. So that just most usually means that he has no interest, yeah, or no somehow no thoughts about that. So that's much more probable and possible that the person will go for your offer when he has an objection. Yeah, so and it's, I don't know, I think there is almost no deals done without objections, without questions, without some hesitation. Yeah, it simply does not exist in the world. So remember, objection is always a good sign, and sometimes the objection is just a reason that the person wants some more information about the offer. Yeah, so he shows his interest or he wants to provide you some feedback on how you have presented your offer, or he has some uncertainty, some hesitation still, so he's giving this objection. Yeah, so that's the way how the person expresses his feedback. Or that can be also a reason that the person wants to check your competence and understand if you really know what you are talking about. Yeah. Yeah, I like. Moving now to the topic of the negotiation or objections regarding the price. You know, I like this one very much. So that's the side of John Glenn and one of the astronauts of the United States. So I guess the question I'm asked the most often is when you were sitting in that capsule listening to the countdown, how did you feel? Yeah, so in the time when he was sitting in the spaceship. Ready to take off and bring him to an international space station or whatever. And he's answering, well, the answer to that is easy. I felt exactly how you would feel if you were getting ready to launch and knew you were sitting on top of 2 million parts, all built by the lowest bidder on a government contract. Yeah, so that's exactly the story about the price negotiation. So definitely the procurement guys or purchasing guys would always try to negotiate the price and always try to get the lower bidder, let's say. But is it always good for the colleagues who would use these parts or use this service? That's questionable. So we as a sales managers shall not forget to remind about that to the procurement and to the guys with whom we are running into the negotiations. So when does it make sense to talk about the price generally? Yeah, only when you have presented the value of your product, and for you it must be also, so that must be point of your presentation, so the value what your product is bringing to the company, yeah, or to the customer, that must be the value must outweigh the price. Yeah, so the value must be bigger than the price, and you shall underline it all the time. Yeah, so because for the person, for the buying person, that may be not automatically clear. Yeah, and if you are not talking about that, then he may not understand that. Yeah, how does it work? So these objections about the price, and why do B2B customers usually behave like that, trying to bargain the price? So generally, I mean, refuse the first price proposal. That's a normal behavior, yeah, and that's also known, I think, by most of the sales managers. So they always try to calculate some discount from the very beginning in order to be able to give it to on the second step. Yeah. So be ready that your first price proposal would be rejected. Then I mean B2B customers. So I mean, since it's still a person, yeah. So we are talking to persons on the customer side. They may try to avoid interaction on a personal level. Yeah, because I mean, it's always easier to sell something on a personal level than to sell something when the computer is buying, you know, when the machine is buying, or when some algorithm is deciding what offer to take, since we do not have this natural advantage, let's say, to agree on the personal level with someone. um, so then that may happen that the procurement has a very high initial requirements at the beginning, and they request some impossible. Yeah, so either very short delivery terms or some I don't know, not existing technologies or whatever. So that's also fine when we submit our offer what is not covering the scope completely. Yeah, because sometimes so the companies, they require a lot, yeah, expecting that all the offers will be a little bit lower than impossible, and that would exactly match. um, yeah, so the procurement guys may sometimes tell you that they openly tell you that they are comparing you with the competitors, and on the today's situation you are worse than competitors, or that they are thinking of usage of an internal resources. instead, yeah, and not involving you, and so on. So that's all can be an arguments, and I think they're all well known. And I mean, talking about the competitors, or this contradistinction of suppliers against each other, that's also well known. You shall just be prepared for that, yeah. So you shall know why your offer is better than competitors, and just try to outline that and underline and say that, yeah, you can do that, but you know that that's other parts what you will miss. um, yeah. So some customers would try to decrease the price by increasing the volume. That may sound a little bit contradictory, yeah, but that can be a way how they do, and they will argue that yeah, you know, we are buying from you more now. You should provide us a discount, because of the volume. So you should be prepared for that, and that's generally always the case. Then that when you give a discount, yeah, so be prepared to reduce the scope, and say yes, okay, we have priced the scope like that. You don't have a budget, you want to get less, then we will cut the scope. Yeah, that's always fair. Then the procurement guys will always be unsure, uncertain, and hesitant about the quality of the product, let's say about the volumes of the product. They will try to underline the disadvantages of your offer and so on. Yeah? So that's all is done in order to get a solid basis, a solid argumentation why you must give a discount. Yeah. Then another situation is that when they say, okay, we are ready to buy it for this price, if you include, I don't know, extra warranty, or if you include a training for free, if you include a set of spare parts for free. Yeah? So try and, let's say, to increase the scope by keeping the same price. And another quite well-known trick is also, let's say, you know, on the very short term, when you are already about to sign the contract, trying to play some last ball, yeah, saying that, yeah, you know, we take it if, because for the sales manager, he sees that, okay, they are already about to sign that, and now they need something more, a little bit, yeah, so I better give it to them, and then we sign it finally. So some of the procurement guys may use this technique as well. Yeah, so what are the recommendations or suggestions how you may react on price objections, or how a sales manager may react on the price objections? Again, at the beginning, very important to let the customer speak out and explain why he thinks that that's their price, what he that's their, yeah, so price what he's ready to pay, and so on. And then if he will start to compare the offers with the competitors, you can always, or no, other way around, if he says, no, you know, your price is too high, yeah, so to my knowledge your price is too high, you shall ask, okay, it's too high, but comparing to what? Yeah, so how do you compare that? And then he says, yeah, so with the competitor DEF. Always ask, and what is the offer of them, because most probably the procurement guy even does not have an offer on that competitor, so that's just either a like game, or other way around, that maybe that he has an offer, so he tells you how much is the competitor price, and your role in that case is then to explain this difference in the price. Yeah, so most probably you know more or less, let's say, the competitor solution or the competitor offering, so try to explain this difference in the price by difference in the value, saying that, yeah, it's clear, they offer is less, but they are not they do not have an access to the cloud. Yeah, so your data will not be available in the cloud, and that's one of the points of our solution, and that's one of the points what brings also a lot of value to your company, as we think. Yeah, so that's the reason why our offer is more expensive. So try to explain this difference in the price by difference in the value, yeah, and the difference in the scope. That's crucial. Okay. And some more rules, how you may work with an bargaining, yeah, or how you may react on the bargaining. So make a customer work on a price objection. Yeah, so ask him to prepare some document. Let's say if you have some big table with the prices, yeah, so price details, drill down of the price. Ask him to show what exactly positions he thinks are too expensive. Yeah, so that must be also, so that shall not be easier to your customer to say just it's too expensive, I do not agree. So try to make him work on this objection. Yeah, so he must provide some evidence, or I don't know, some ideas why he thinks that it's too expensive. Then so the third point here I like, so if you get an idea to change your offer, I don't know, to exclude something, to include something, to recombinate something, always ask customer if that will help. Yeah, so check it with the customer and say, okay, I see that we need to rework our offer. If we do so and so, would that help? Yeah, and then that's again the trying to bind the customer. So when he says, yeah, that's good, that may help, then do that. Don't forget to keep, let's say, the history of your communication in a written form, better in email, so that you can always come back and see what was the request, what you have done. And I've seen sometimes even, like, the huge tables, because these negotiations, they may be multi steps. Yeah, so they may be 10-20 steps in like a ping pong. So they're asking that, we are doing this, they're asking that, we are doing this. So I've seen even sometimes like tables prepared for management showing that, okay, that was the step 1 of the negotiation, steps 2, step 3. Yeah, so to show what have been done and why we need to move now in this or that change of the offer. Yeah, so change of the scope or whatever. Yeah, and before you make any type of discount, try to bind the customer. Yeah? So again, yeah, so try to get this confirmation. If you get this price, will we move on? Will we sign a contract? Is that the final step? Yeah, so this binding message is very important. Okay. Yeah, I like also this side of John Ruskin, philosopher. So it's unwise to pay too much. Yeah, it's unwise to pay too much, but it's worse to pay too little. When you pay too much, you lose just a little money, and that's it. But when you pay too little, you sometimes lose everything, because the thing you bought was incapable of doing the thing it was bought to do. Yeah, and sometimes, unfortunately, the procurement guys, they forget about that. Yeah, so in this search for cheap, yeah, and quick, so sometimes they get an offers, I don't know, either from some yeah, so not legal suppliers, so not exactly clear suppliers, and then they may get some bad products as a result, and that they will break, they do not get a warranty, they don't get a spare part. So that's kind of tricky thing, yeah, of buying cheap things. Okay, so that was an overview of how we can work with an objections, a part of a business partner responsibility, let's say. Yeah, so just objections about the proposal, about the offer, and objections on the price level. And now let us have a look at the ambassador role. An ambassador is basically a role when you represent your customer at your own company. Yeah, and you can understand it in a way that as a sales manager, you get to the customer and you get to know some new project, and you understand that this project may be interesting for your company. So you get back to the office and you start talking to different stakeholders at your company, trying to make them to buy them in. Yeah, and because that's like a project management, that's maybe a commercial specialist, that maybe some technical guys. Yeah, so we need to agree with them that this project of your customer is of high relevance for the company, and then they shall also work together with you to win this project. because you can understand it that, I mean, if the company has a lot of sales representatives and a limited, let's say, delivery unit, yeah, or supply unit, yeah, so the project team is not big, yeah, so there is limited. So then there is always a question, okay, so what project do we want to do, what project do we want to execute, do we want to offer? And then that may happen that requests from different customers or different sales representatives, they compete with each other. So because for the company, it's much more interesting to run for a project which has a bigger margin, bigger volume, can be a good reference, yeah, and so on. So as a let's say, as a sales manager, this ambassador role, you shall never forget about that. And I have seen so many examples also when the colleagues, like a very good sales managers, they were not able to sell, let's say, the needs and requests of their customers inside their own company, yeah, and they quit it because when you work in a big company, yeah, so it's not only one guy whom you need to sell the necessity to run a project for your customer. That would be a technical guy, that would be a commercial guy, that may be a legal department, whom you need to say, yeah, now we need to agree on a new contract, and the customer is special, so he has some special terms and conditions. Let us try to think how we can do that, because there are perspectives and so on. Yeah, and that's a wrong understanding for a sales guy, for a sales manager, to think, to assume that every project, every idea he brings with from a customer will be accepted, yeah. And if he collects now here like some requests, he comes back to the office and then his sales plan is done. So then he will need to sell, yeah, so these ideas and these requests in his company first, yeah, or second, let's say. And that's this the ambassador role, so the secure fulfillment of commitment. So you can imagine that if you talk to someone at a customer, the customer says, we have here a project, would you like to do that? And if you say, yeah, that sounds good, we would like to do that, so that's exactly this commitment. So you need to be able to fulfill this commitment. You need to be sure that when you are back in the office, you are ready to convince, and you're able to convince your company to do the project. So in this part, I mean, that's only like 2 slides. We will shortly have a look how you can, let's say, organize as a sales manager, how you can organize activities or relationships within your own company. Yeah. So here are some advices on how to build the credible relations inside the company. So make notes during the discussions. That's one of the, again, one of the points of active listening or effective communication, effective listening. So that definitely shows that you are interested, you are writing down, and you will not forget what you're talking to. Yeah. So when you talk to another colleagues, make notes. Try avoiding of sending long emails, call directly on corporate mobile phone. I mean, that's the easiest way, I think, how you can get in contact with someone. Always make clear what is your role and what is the role of your team in the organization, because sometimes, especially in the big companies, we need to talk to some central functions, and for them they're working with all businesses, with all sales representatives, so maybe they do not really understand what is the role of you and how do you contribute into the success of the company in general. If you make some promise, because that can be also the situation, yeah, so you promise to your legal colleague that you will agree on some terms and conditions with the customer. So when you promise that in this direction, so try to keep it as well, yeah, so try to do your best in order to agree. So that will increase your credibility within the organization and with the colleagues, and when we'll come next time, they will know, okay, so this sales manager is a good guy, yeah, so he knows what we as a company need, and he is ready to defend that at the customer side. Yeah, so try to involve other colleagues as soon as possible into the projects, yeah, so especially when we are talking about some technical experts or some commercial experts. So if there is a project where your technical competence is not enough to negotiate with the customer, try to involve the expert from the very beginning so that he will be part of the negotiation. He will put it in the way how let's say your company can do that. He will explain it in more details, and then you will minimize the risk that basically you have promised something without really understanding of what you are promising, and it cannot be executed, it cannot be done. Yeah. um, yeah, so I mean, shit happens. Yeah, so there are always possibility that some failures will happen, but do not hide that. Yeah, especially within your company. So in front of the colleagues, you may always be able to say, to accept the failure and say, yeah, you know, we wanted to do like that, it didn't work out. Yeah, so let us have a look together what can be a solution for that. I mean, just be transparent. So there must be some place where you can be 100% transparent, and if it's not the place with the customer, so at least that must be at your company. And try to provide, let's say, your colleagues only with the relevant information, because you can imagine you know a lot about your customer, you know a lot about the request, technical details about the solution, project, whatever, specification. But maybe for a legal colleague, so the colleague from a legal department, it's not that relevant in order to conclude the contract, yeah, in order to prepare the contract draft. So try to filter, so you know what is relevant for legal, you know what the work of legal is. Try to filter the information in order to feed the colleagues only with the relevant inputs they need. And then there is here like yeah, so some diagram how you can build the trust in relations. And important here is to build the relationships with the colleagues without authority. So in a big organizations, we often have to cooperate with the colleagues from different departments, different functions, and maybe a neighbor groups where we don't have a common manager. So we just need to find a way how we collaborate together. Yeah, so we not have any like a formal way to influence the colleagues. So we need always to find these informal relationships. Yeah, and so the first one is definitely assume that everyone is your partner. Yeah, so at least in your own company, I believe in 95% of the cases that will be, on 95, yeah, 97% of cases that will be the case. Yeah, so that you will get, let's say, a confirmation, yeah, so that, yeah, so your colleagues are your partners, and actually they want to support you. They want this deal to be happen, they want the contract be closed, and they want a project be started. So just have this positive attitude and assume that from the very beginning. So try to define your goals and priorities at the very beginning, and understand the responsibilities of a colleague. Yeah? So understand what are the drivers of a commercial guy. So why EBIT is so important for him. You want to give a discount, he says we cannot give a discount because we need to keep a high margin. Why? Yeah. Try to define this joint value. So try to find the overlapping areas where, let's say, your goals overlap with the goals of the colleague. So both of you are interested in the project. Why? Yeah. So what are these overlapping things? And work on relationships. So talk to colleagues, do networking. Yeah. So try to connect. I mean, in your company, you can connect on a personal level. Yeah. So try to do that. And so there is a principle give and receive. Yeah, so do not forget that when you're asking for help, the colleagues also expect that you would support them with some input from your side as well. Yeah. So let's have a look here in detail. So starting from the beginning, assume that everyone is your partner. Yeah. So this positive attitude from the very beginning. Yeah, so I already told that in the complex organizations that may be very useful. And yeah, so think about that, how you may build a mutually useful, mutually helpful relations with different stakeholders. Um, yeah, so do not for I mean, formulate and define your goals. Yeah, and you may have a short-term goal, so win this project, but you may have also a long-term goals. Let's say to make the customer a key account. Yeah, so to expand the business with this customer in next 5 years, two times. Yeah, so that's a more long-term goals, and that maybe that's long-term goals of your company as well. So make them clear to your colleagues and say that, look, from our management we want to expand business with this company. Yeah, so that's why this project now is so crucial. So try always to find the base, let's say a long-term base for some short-term activities. Yeah, and I mean, if you plan to work in the company during some years, you shall always try to prioritize their relationships. Yeah, so against the current task. So your priority must be also building the relationships, let's say, with the colleagues, and trustful relationships, and trying to find the compromise. Ask, so when you want to work together with another colleagues, ask them what are their KPIs. Yeah, so what are their goals. Try to see if sometimes someone is, let's say, yeah, about to retire, so he may have some one goal, let's say for next 3 years. Another colleague is a very young and active one, so he wants to build his career. He may have another goals. So think about this definition of goals and interests. Yeah, so how you may define them. Find the joint, as I said, yeah, so this overlap. What is the value proposition of another colleague into the for the activity, and what is your offer for another colleague into that activity? So bring this example of legal department, tell that, yeah, you may build some contacts on the with the legal department, with the customer, yeah, in order to get the feedback right away without waiting for long times, yeah, for example. Or say that you may organize a meeting with the legal department, and they will be able to clear all the questions face to face. So that's the topics what we need to work here. Yeah, so working on the relations, that's often a reflection. Yeah, so think if you had some mistrust, let's say situations with a colleague, or was it a good relation, always a good relationships in the past. So what is the attitude, let's say, with your colleague? Yeah, and this principle give and receive, simply make it transparent. Make transparent what is your goal in that project, how you can support your colleague who is working together with your project, and define with him how he can support you. Yeah, so that's exactly important here is the transparency, that you know what you are doing. Yeah, and so any success is a team success. Yeah, so every success would be something what you would be able to do only with your team. Yeah, so not alone, and especially today in a b2b, that's never a case that one person may achieve something. So that will be always a team, a sales manager, technical specialist, maybe a project manager, a commercial specialist, a legal department, maybe an export control. Yeah, so that's always a team who needs to be built, let's say, to work on the project, and together they make results, yeah, and achieve success. Okay, so that was the last lecture of our course, International Sales and Negotiations. I hope you got a little bit of, let's say, this practical touch. Yeah, so a hands-on knowledge, hands-on methods, and let's say ways, and you have an understanding now how does the life of a sales manager look like. Yeah, and yeah, probably even some of you would be interested to take this career path, and yeah, so start sooner or later as one of them, yeah, hopefully successful sales managers in any field.